bring up my next guest. He is out of Washington State. He is, of course, former head of the Seattle King County NAACP. Carl Mack is an historian. Carl, your issues with Juneteenth. Your thoughts about this action today. What are the issues?
I think they're historically absolutely incorrect, and I think they're insulting to us as a people. And so
who's incorrect?
Those who, the Congress, that bill passing was absolutely incorrect.
So what should it have been?
Okay, so the bill says, and what is being taught, and I'll just give you specifically in the state of Washington. And first of all, Roland, let me be clear. I have absolutely no problem with Juneteenth. My problem is the historical efforts that are being made and what's being surrounded. I call it the misrepresentation of Juneteenth. And so what happened in the state of Washington is they passed similar legislation, and this legislation has been passed a lot throughout this country. And in the state of Washington, similar to what they just did in Congress, they said that the legislature intends to designate Juneteenth as a statewide holiday celebrating the end of chattel slavery. So what people have been taught about Juneteenth is that those of our ancestors who was enslaved in Galveston, Texas, number one, they were the last blacks to be enslaved in this country. Number two, that they got the word a year and a half late after President Lincoln had signed the Emancipation Proclamation. Both of those things historically are just incorrect. There is no other way to put it. Now, all one has to do is to understand this. Slavery ended in this country on December 6th, 1865, 6 months after Juneteenth. Now, going back to the Emancipation Proclamation, which everybody seems to get so twisted, keep in mind what Lincoln said. Lincoln said, for those states in rebellion against the Union, and there were 11 of them, but in the Emancipation Proclamation, Lincoln only mentioned 10 of them. And the only reason he only mentioned 10 is because the 11th state that he didn't mention was Tennessee. He didn't mention them because the Union already had control of Tennessee. So he said, for those states in rebellion against the Union, slavery is now free, over. Now, keep in mind, there were 4 border states in which slavery was still practiced. Those border states were Maryland, Missouri, Kentucky, Kentucky, and Delaware. So when Lincoln said that to him, I want you to imagine this, and you don't have to imagine, this is just a fact. When those 11 states left the Union, they didn't act as 11 individual states. They formed a confederacy. And when they formed a confederacy, in effect, they formed their own nation, which means they elected a president, Jefferson Davis. They elected a vice president, Alexander Stephens of Georgia. They wrote a Confederate Constitution. They were their own nation, Brother Roland. So when Lincoln issued, quote unquote, an executive order trying to tell them what to do, that's like the Prime Minister of Canada trying to tell the United States citizens what to do. He didn't have any authorization. That's why it took a war. So that's why I'm saying to you that when the news is that they got the word a year and a half late, it didn't matter. The Confederacy were their own nation. They didn't give a damn what the United States said, what Lincoln said. That's why it took the war. Now, as far as them being the last blacks enslaved, I just heard your last guest. I've heard all of you say how important it is to get it right. Today, there's a movement that has swept this country that we should all be proud of, Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter. Do we think that Black lives just started mattering? Because let's go back to what happened with the Emancipation Proclamation. Lincoln said that in those states not in rebellion against the Union, slavery is still legal. Keep that going. 2 of those states were Delaware and Kentucky. 2 of them was Maryland and Missouri. And keep in mind, West Virginia wasn't a state when the Civil War started. It became a state after Virginia seceded. And those 48 counties didn't want to secede, so they became a state after the Civil War. So now let's look at those 5 border states. Maryland, on November 1st, 1864, before the Civil War ended, Maryland abolished slavery. Missouri, on January 11th, 1865, before the Civil War ended, they abolished slavery. West Virginia, the newly entered slave state on February 3rd, 1865, ended slavery. The Civil War ends on April 9th, 1865. 2 months later, Granger rides into Galveston, Texas, and issues General Order Number 3, which we now call June 19th. I ask you to remember what was going on in Kentucky and Delaware after the Civil War. What was going on in Kentucky and Delaware after Juneteenth? I'll tell you, Roland, there were 225,000 of our ancestors still enslaved, and they did not taste freedom until December 6th, 1865, when Georgia became the 27th state to ratify the 13th Amendment. That is my problem with what is going on in states all across this country, and that is my problem about what just happened in the United States Congress. If you want to designate a date in which all black folks can celebrate freedom, that date, as far as I'm concerned, as far as history appears to be concerned, is December 6th, because that is the day in which Georgia ratified the 13th Amendment. Now, as it applies to Delaware and Kentucky, keep this in mind, Roland. Delaware didn't ratify the 13th Amendment until 1901. Kentucky ratified the 13th Amendment in 1976. And the state that I'm from, Mississippi didn't ratify the 13th Amendment until February 7, 2013. So, do I have a problem with Juneteenth? Absolutely not. Do I have a problem with the historical inaccuracy of it? Every part of that I got a problem with.
And I think that has been, first of all, like for years, Lincoln freed the slaves. Well, again, and there were people who took exception to Lerone Bennett and others who corrected that. Frankly, what we have folks in this country with a bumper sticker version of history. The reason I think you see the focus on Juneteenth is I think it goes back to this here, because Texas became the first state to actually make it a state holiday. And so what then happened was there were other people who wanted to recognize that fact, and so all of a sudden Juneteenth events then went out. For everybody to understand, Juneteenth was a Texas holiday. To your point, what you just laid out, that was specific to Texas. When General Granger arrived on the shores of Galveston, of the beach in Galveston, and delivered that particular announcement. I think what happened was other people gravitated to that, and then it then became this sort of all-encompassing moment to say, okay, here's something that actually recognizes slavery or the ending of slavery in this country. But you're absolutely right. And I think now, I believe now, the opportunity is to, in the words of Paul Harvey, now tell the rest of the story.
Absolutely. So listen. So Roland, the thing that the congressman, I think it's Johnson, I'm not sure your last guess was.
Former Senator Doug Jones.
Okay, Doug Jones. What you and Doug Jones agreed on a lot was it's important to get it right. Today, we as black folks want to say Black Lives Matter. Then what about the 225,000? Now, I will give you just a little pushback on why Juneteenth took off. I think part of what you said is right, but the rest of the story is this. We all know that our history has not been taught.
Right.
So to what Doug Jones said, there's a lot of black folks that don't know the scholarship of our experience in this country.
Oh, no doubt. Oh, no doubt.
And so once we didn't know it, and somebody comes in and tells the myth that these were the last blacks enslaved, they got the news a year and a half later. Well, we just took off and ran with it. And then now, Roland, on May 25th of 2020, well, that gave another steroid injection to the myth behind Juneteenth. And that day was the day that Rodney King, George Floyd was murdered. Now you got white guilt everywhere, and white folks want to do something. Damn it, let's just make Juneteenth a holiday. That's fine. But it didn't start with that. I would tell you this. Go back and look at the 105th Congress of the United States. There was a senator from the state of Mississippi named Trent Lott who introduced legislation similar to what was just passed, and it clearly said June 19th, the day that slavery officially came to an end. Then over in the House, in that same year, I believe it was 97. In that same year, now you had J.C. Watts in the House introduced a joint resolution that said the exact same thing, that Juneteenth is the day on which slavery finally came to an end. So I'm not trying to play the technicalities here. But what I am saying is in the spirit of Harriet Tubman.
Right.
They asked that sister, baby, why would you keep going back? You free. And she said, how could I be free when my people ain't free? Well, how in the hell can we celebrate Juneteenth as the day on which slavery ended when there were over 225,000 of our folks still enslaved in the state of Delaware and Kentucky?
Well, I dare say
that is my problem.
I dare say the same as how we celebrate July 4th as Independence Day. And as Frederick Douglass said, what does this mean to the slave on July 4th? And so, but here's the last point I'll make, and this is very simple. What you laid out is why you got to have black-owned media. Is why because here's the piece. The bottom line is, and you already see it. I know ABC is having a big Juneteenth primetime show. All of a sudden, trust me, you're about to see businesses all across America. And here's the deal. I'm just laying in the cut because I'm telling you, every company that wants to try to profit off of Juneteenth, I'm gonna hit all of them saying, where's your black spin? Where's your black-owned spin? See, that's the other deal. It's just like if a business out there all of a sudden dropping Kwanzaa commercials, you got to be asking how much money you spending with black-owned companies. Not giving away. So this is why we also have to have our own media where we can actually have this conversation, because this ain't gonna happen on MSNBC, CNN, Fox News, ABC, NBC, CBS.
Make no mistake about it. Make no mistake about it, Roland. And to your point, let me say this. I know that you know the Bennett family who owns the Seattle Medium and KRSZ out of Seattle. Okay, so I wrote an op-ed piece about what I just explained to you all. Not one white newspaper would pick it up, but that got picked up by the Seattle Medium, the black-owned press. And I've always been a huge supporter. In the same way, I listened to the pride that you all had about the legislation being passed. But now we as brothers and sisters right now on your program are going through a learning moment where we're going, damn, maybe I didn't know what Brother Mack was saying, but we're respecting that. And look, I don't expect you to trust what I'm saying. Just go back and verify.
No. But I'm saying, but here's the moment. To me, this is the moment. And I'm gonna bring my panel in after this. The moment for us is this here. This is now just like that white retired lieutenant colonel when he gave the speech on Memorial Day, and when he told the history of Memorial Day and they cut his microphone because he talked about it was freed, it was actually slaves who actually started Memorial Day, and then they cut his mic. This is where we now use the bully pulpit. And so when folks say, hey, enslavement, actually that's not the truth. So here's my whole deal. This is where we can use the day to say, first of all, there should be a day that speaks to slavery in America, but we gonna also correct the story because even when we use the word we were freed, we actually weren't. That's why I say all the time that we were for the first time, black people were technically fully free Americans in 1970. It took going through Jim Crow, the Voting Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act, the Fair Housing Act, took all of those different things. That's why I say technically fully free, and that leads to a whole other conversation about freedom.
But you know, I'll say this, Roland. I'll give you just a little pushback. There is no debate over what chattel slavery was.
Oh yes, I got it.
And as such,
that's why I said freedom. That's why I said freedom.
Right, but there is no debate what chattel slavery was, and all I'm saying is on December 6, 1865, that is the day that chattel slavery in this country ended for our ancestors.
Got it. And what I'm saying is we should use the day to tell the whole story and not keep allowing his story to be told. Carl Mack, I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
No problem, my brother. Thanks.
Go to my folks. Back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
Everything and nothing at the same time.
You looking great.
Thank you.
What is it about all these black folks in Essence that's just so different and special?
And think what?
What's so special about and unique with all the black folks, the black love here at Essence?
That is what? That is what? That is all black love. That's what's significant and different about it. You know, it's pure.
And then, of course, you got all the sisters.
Sorry?
Then of course you got all the sisters as well.
Exactly. And brothers.
Oh yeah. Things going well for you?
It's going real well for me. God's been real good to me. Still being good to me. I'm just doing what I gotta do.
It's always good seeing you.
Well, thank you so much. I love this.
We gotta mix it up a little bit.
I feel you, baby.
If you ain't regular, you can't have regular pockets.
All right, folks, each and every single day here on Roland Martin Unfiltered, we're going to feature that Essence Festival Coca-Cola throwback moment leading up to, of course, this year's 2021 virtual Essence Festival. Because of COVID, they're not having the big gathering in New Orleans, but they will be virtual. And so on June 26th and June 27th, two weekends, June 26th, June 27th, July 3rd, July 4th. Essence Festival will be virtual. You can simply go to their YouTube channel, the Facebook page, and go to essence.com to actually watch it. You're going to have the workshops in the daytimes beginning at 2 p.m. And then, of course, the concerts beginning at 6 p.m. Eastern every single night, going until 10 p.m. And so we look forward to sharing with you some of our throwback moments that, of course, was Shaka Khan from the 2016 Essence Festival. So we've got some great stuff dipping into my archives to show you. And we're going to do that every single day right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered. And we're going to be sharing photos on my social media. So go to Instagram, go to Facebook and Twitter, Snapchat. You'll be able to see those throwback moments as well. And so we're going to also, we're going to give you guys an email to share some of your Essence Festival throwback photos and video that we're going to be sharing with the audience. And we certainly look forward to doing that.